and welcome to Every Season Counts, the podcast.
The place where we're going to have fun and raw chats about all things faith and life.
So pull up a pew, grab a coffee, it's going to be so much fun.
Hello guys, and welcome back to Every Season Counts, the podcast. How are we doing, guys?
Good, thanks.
Feeling pretty good.
Pretty tired,
We're quite
guys.
weary.
We were tired.
Literally just got back from Lydia's hen do. As in,
Like
it was
20
today.
minutes ago.
Yeah.
We've just got back.
We've
This is
got
the
Red Bulls in
commitment.
front of us.
Yeah.
Feeling funky fresh.
Pretty knackered, but do you know what I mean?
It was
Gotta get
fun.
on the
Commitment
pod.
to the cause at this time.
Yeah, it was fun though.
It was so
so
fun.
fun.
Best weekend ever.
Maddie did such a good job of planning it for me.
She did.
So
Quite stressful.
All the
appreciate
details
her.
you literally smashed, I
Yeah.
thought.
Thanks, guys.
It was literally the most me weekend I think
Yeah.
I could have ever been. So thank you, Mads.
I'm glad. It was pretty stressful, but I'm really glad you had a nice time.
What was your favourite part, Lyd?
Do you know what? The surprise you guys gave me.
Oh,
that
yeah.
was so sweet.
That was nice,
Do
actually.
you want to explain what the surprise
Yeah.
was?
So it was 6 of us hanging out. We had a house together, and Mads was like, "Oh, we're gonna go just have a picnic." And then we get to the place, and there's like 15 other people there that I was not expecting to be there, and it was the sweetest
So
time.
fun.
We had food together, and we played games, which is funny. It was just fun. It's so nice, and the weather was so nice as
It
well.
was. Yeah, Mads can testify to that, can't you, mate?
Guys,
Look at the
I
state
am
of your back.
literally burned to a crisp. Like, if you could see the state of my back
We
right
put
now,
pure ice cubes on her last night and they literally melted in
I am
like
in
5
so
seconds.
much pain. Like, honestly, I don't know what happened, but I look like I'm bruised. Like, it looks
It's
like
like she's wearing a top, like
Yeah.
from where the tan lines are. Tan lines, burn lines.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like white and then red.
Sailor B, do you know what I mean?
Oh well. What can you do?
You live and you learn.
You do.
Yeah, sun cream, guys.
Yeah.
Sun cream. I'm feeling good about today's episode.
I'm really excited.
I'm
Me
really
too.
excited. So over the series, we've spoken about what it's like to like have a good relationship with yourself and loving who you're created to be. We've spoken about friendship and your relationship with God. And today we are talking about romantic relationships.
Bomb, bomb, bomb.
The immediate one you think of when you hear the word relationships. Something I think is really cool about today's episode is that each of us have a different perspective of where we're at right now in the season of life we're in.
Mm.
So we're going to talk about each of those perspectives, and it's going to be fun. I think it's, beautiful to talk about all kinds of
Yeah, it is.
relationships. And so I think before we kick it off, I think it'd be good to just, say what our relationship status is right now. Beth, do you want to go?
Well, right now I'm dating Dan Gaston. So
Name drop.
that's me.
You must know him. He's
How long
pretty
have you-
famous.
yeah.
Hey Dan.
Hey, Dan.
How long have you been together?
Coming up 2 years at this point, which is a bit
Oh, blimey.
mad. Yeah. But yeah, he's a good egg. How about you, Mads?
I'm very much single and have been for quite a while, which,
Thriving?
it's a vibe. I really am.
Yeah.
Single and thriving.
Yeah. I'm engaged,
Yes, she is.
as you know, because we went on my hen do.
Hen
I'm engaged. I've been with Toby for 5 years and like 4 months, so like nearly 5.5 years. So it's been a while. And we've been
Nice.
engaged for about just over a year now.
Mads, what's your favourite part about being single?
Good question. You'd probably be shocked to hear that actually there's a lot of really good bits, I think.
I'm literally not
And-
shocked one bit.
No, not
Yeah.
sure.
But I think the sad thing is some people who are listening will be quite shocked at that. I think probably the best thing about it, and like something actually I think I've been noticing a lot more recently, is just like how much free time you have. And like I actually do live quite a busy life, but like I just think the thought of trying to, there would be a lot I would have to lay down, I know, at this moment if I was having to commit to a relationship. And I think I just think it's a really I really do love my the season I'm in of being single, and just like I don't know, you just live your own life. I can go wherever I want, and not that it's a controlling thing, but just like very free in my decisions.
Just
like,
got to check of yourself.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't have
like,
to
I'm
think about
literally-
another person.
yeah, I'm
Thank
literally
God.
moving to Birmingham in 2 months and like haven't really had to think about anyone except for my friends.
No, it's mad. No hard
sensitive
feelings.
subject. But like,
Kidding
no, but you know what I
everyone.
mean. Like, it's not this like massive like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
my partner has to up and move with me,
No, it's
or
true.
I'm transitioning from like local to long distance. Or,
Mm.
like, I can just go quite
Yeah.
freely.
Yeah.
And I just think that, yeah, actually, it's something I don't want to take for granted.
Mm.
Yeah, I just do really enjoy being single. It's really fun. I think another thing I really love is, as well, I think I'm quite involved in like youth ministry, and I mentor a few teenagers and like teenage girls, and yeah, very involved in like our youth work at my church. And I just actually really enjoy being there, like for them to be able to see like a really fun and like relational girl who's 20, 21, who's single, because I think at that age of like 13, 14, like relationships are just the be all end all, and
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I just really want a boyfriend, and there's nothing wrong with that, but like they like the amount of them that's just like, oh man, it's like, how are you single? And I'm like, bro, I'm
Quite
thriving.
easily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
this is great. And like,
Yeah.
is it something that I want for my future? Sure, would be great, but it's definitely something that I've like learned that I don't want to rush, and
Yeah.
like,
Mm.
yeah, very content.
Such a good spot
That's
to be
so
in.
good. Beth, you're currently in a long distance relationship.
I am.
You live here and Dan goes to university in London.
You?
So quite a distance. How has that been for you?
Well, good question. First of all, I think before he left was horrible to think about, because
Yeah.
I think especially when you've experienced living down the road from each other, you really just get used to that being like,
Mm.
do you want to come over and eat some chicken nuggets? It's like just a really
Yeah.
normal thing, or
Yeah.
whatever. That was really specific, but you know what I mean. So then I was like, gosh, the thought of Dan being like 5 hours away, and actually like we're going to see each other once a month for 2 days, going from seeing each other most days to that just felt so scary. And to be honest, last summer was really hard before he left. But then since then, I mean, it's not been easy, I wouldn't say, but I actually think we've grown so much through it. Like, our relationship is in a completely different place to where it was last year now. And I think, like, we've learned so much about communication. I've learned a lot about how I communicate, especially, and, like, the need to put the other person first in those things. Like, you can't leave someone waiting for an answer or whatever else. And I think also like prioritizing each other and making time, because as Mad said, like, life's busy, both at uni, both like doing quite intense degrees, but really just being intentional about being like, when are we catching up this week, and like being aware of the other person in everything you're doing as well.
Yeah.
And like honoring them and your relationship. So yeah, I mean, it can be done, I think, is something, because before we did it, I just was like, how are we ever going to do this? Like, and I think it's just quite nice now to be able to talk to people, and people who are potentially going into long distance, to be like, it is so manageable. Like, it's not easy, but it's so manageable, and there is actually beautiful things that come from it. It's not all just like surviving. It really is thriving as well at the same time. So
So good.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Lydia.
Yeah, go for it.
My question is, obviously you're getting married in a couple months.
Yeah.
Vibes. What do you think will change the most between your relationship with Toby now?
That's
to
a good
then
question.
when the ring is
Oh.
on the finger,
Oh my
That's a
goodness.
the
good question,
legal
Beth.
documents are signed.
Yeah.
What is going to change?
Oh, that's a really good one. I think Toby and I, we see each other every day anyway. So it's not going to be weird seeing him every day. But we've never lived together before. And I think that is going to be like the biggest transition, if you will, when we get married. Because we've obviously both come from different households, and with that comes different traits that you carry, of even like simple things like, when do you tidy your room? When do you make your bed? Like, when would you do your washing, or how would you do dinner times and stuff like that? So I think just learning each other's differences and creating our own household and our own way forward, using what we've grown up with and coming together to create our own way of living together. So I think that might be a transition, just to kind of understand each other in a different way, because we obviously never lived together. So I think that will be something that is, a transition. And I think that living together, seeing each other literally every day, waking up together, having breakfast together, might mean that we want more intentional alone time. Not because we don't want to be with each other, but just because right now we live in separate places and we have that. And when you live together, you have to almost carve that out, I'm assuming. Obviously, I don't know. But I think making sure that we have our own personal days when we want them, I think is probably what will change the most.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I have another question for you, Lyd. How, like, at what point did you know that you're ready to be a wife?
Oh.
Because, like,
big
that's
one.
big, isn't it?
Yeah. So Toby and I spoke about marriage throughout basically our entire relationship, not to kind of rush it or anything, but just it was a conversation of, are you even open to it? Can you see a future here? Which I think is really important to have that conversation with your significant other. So it wasn't like suddenly a shock of, oh, let's talk about marriage. It was something we'd always spoken about. And I think that when I knew that I was like, I could get married, it's a really hard thing to explain, because it wasn't necessarily like an instant, oh, I can be a wife now. It was just a sense of being ready to do every day with Toby, and just knowing that I'm fed up of saying goodbye, and I don't want to live apart from him anymore. Just knowing that I was ready to spend every day with him. It was just, I think it's a feeling that came gradually. And I think having conversations about it really helped me to know that we were on the same page. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, we can see our future together and it's going in the same direction. So I think, just having lots of conversations and just kind of that feeling coming gradually of, I want this, like this is what I want now.
So good. Yeah.
And I think also taking the time to pray and ask God, is this who I'm supposed to spend every single day of my future with, is something that I also did and something that I would recommend doing. And that's like a massive thing to do when you love someone, to be basically like, I'm going to ask this prayer and God could say, no, actually, right now this isn't who you're supposed to be with, or right now you're not supposed to get married, and that might not be what you necessarily want. But I think it's about asking God and to step into the situation and guide you to do the right thing, because it is a massive decision. It's literally a lifelong commitment. And so I think definitely something I did and something I would recommend to someone who is, I guess, thinking about getting married or thinking about potentially doing something very soon in the future. I would pray about it and ask God, like, is this who I'm supposed to spend my life with? And it might not be like a sudden like big sign in the ground. It might be like what happened with me, just a gradual feeling that came over time. But I think it's really important to pray about this, because it is a massive thing that you're gonna go through in life. It's a massive thing that you're gonna do. But I think for me it was a more gradual feeling, and I just knew that I was supposed to be married to Toby at one point.
So good.
Yeah.
Mads, would you say that being in church often, I don't know about anyone else, but often there is almost a pressure to find the one that you're going to spend your life with? Do you feel, as you're single and in your 20s, that there is pressure from others around you? Do you feel that?
I think, such a good question. I think there's been because I have been I've never been in a relationship within my adulthood or young adulthood. Like my last relationship was literally when I was like 15, 16. So like, yeah, very different to who I am now and all that. But yeah, I think through that 5-6 years, there's been seasons and it's more depending who I'm surrounding myself with. Of like, I think the times where I have felt quite insecure about being single, or I don't know, a bit more like on the prowl, if you will, is when I'm surrounding myself with people who are constantly speaking about it, which is actually also from insecurity of their singleness, I would say, because it was other single people.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it is actually to do with your own self understanding of it. Of like, I think it would be easy to say like, oh, like those people constantly make me, like not specific people, but you can be like, oh, when I go to church, I feel like I need to be married because everyone else is married. But I think actually that's more pressure you put on yourself. And I definitely wouldn't. I know that a lot of people say that church as a whole puts marriage on a pedestal, and I really do think in a lot of churches they really do. Yeah. And it's something we really need to pull away from, because it's just not healthy. Like,
no.
But I think the church I'm currently in literally has no young adults other than like the young adults that it has is basically my twin brother and you, Lyd.
Yeah.
So no one that is a potential. So like there is a couple others, but yeah. So I think
Lydia or Toby's options.
Yeah. I think that pressure isn't really put on me by other people in the church. But I think it's really hard. Yeah, there's definitely been times. I remember when I was younger, when people would be like, oh man, so you got a boyfriend, I would be so embarrassed to say that I hadn't, which is so weird. Like,
it's like, oh, actually, no, I don't.
Like, I'd be like, oh, like it's a shameful thing. Like it was that brands you that you're like not beautiful, you're not like wanted, which is just completely
biggest
like
lie ever.
The biggest lie. So, I definitely have had times where that pressure has been put on, but I think I surround myself with people who would they wouldn't idolize those sorts of things or like put much value in them.
That's good.
Yeah.
I've got a question for both of you two, which is there anything you wish you'd known before getting into a long-term relationship / meeting the one, we hope?
Fingers crossed. I think something I wish I had known, and I often speak to my friends about now, is that you don't need to be sorted out before you meet someone. Because I think such a thing that I was told was that like you need to kind of like be in a good place and sorted, and don't bring that into your relationship, and etc. And to a certain degree there is things that I think it is important to look at, like don't just go ignorance is bliss on it, because but I think when Dan and I met, I was at a very emotionally vulnerable point, which you guys know about. And I think when we first started dating, I was so nervous because I was like, he's gonna think I'm crazy. And I think I really believe that God gave Dan so much grace in that time to be with me and sit with me in it without really understanding at all where I was coming from. Like I'd only just moved to Cornwall. He didn't know context, he didn't know my past properly really, and never once made me feel like I was too much or and I think that is just one thing I would say is if it's the right person, it's not going to be something that scares them off. They'll sit with you in it, and it's actually a beautiful thing to journey through together. Yeah. So I would say get real with yourself. Don't just ignore the places that you need to work on, because there is things that will make being in a relationship easier. Yes. But you don't need to be in the very best point of your life, mentally or anything else before.
I think for me it would have been really helpful to know the best kind of way to deal with any sort of conflict. And I don't mean just arguing at each other and how to like get through a shouting match, but more just how to deal with disagreements, because you will have disagreements and not everything is perfect and you're not going to be on the same page 100% of the time. But I think it would have been really helpful for me to know that that's okay, because I was quite young when we were 16 when we first started dating, which is mad to think about. But you look back, you're like, actually we didn't know anything, and we didn't know how to properly deal when we had a disagreement. Like you could easily hide away from it instead of facing it on properly. And I think as you're in a relationship for such a long time, you just learn that over the years. But I think it's really important to teach people how to deal with conflict and not to see it as a bad thing, because you will have disagreements, and to not hide from it, but to learn how to communicate well with each other, which, like I said, it's just something that comes with time. But I think sometimes for people, they have conflict and that scares them and that ends it and makes it not become a long-term relationship, when actually you can push through the conflict if you just learn how to.
And I think you can actually learn to love each other better in it, because you know, when things are all dandy and you're sat watching the sunset, like it's reasonably easy to be like, yeah, I really love this person, but in the moments when you're like, we really are not seeing eye to eye right now, and like me and Dan have had things that we just point blank like just can't get exactly on the same page on, but you like have to slowly learn like, oh, like how can I love Dan better in this, and like, you know, where is a compromise we can find, or like how do we speak well to each other about this, but also actually well to our friends about this, because like, you know, you seek advice from your wise counsel, if you will, and like how do I speak well of Dan whilst processing this situation.
So good.
I don't know, I think that's a really good one, Liz.
And I think it's about coming to an understanding that you're both individual people, and I think often when you become a couple, it's just like people see you as like one person sometimes, and it's like you have your own opinions, your own dislikes, your own likes, and I think when you accept that your partner is not always going to be on the same page as you, I think that really helps to process and not be the end of the world when you disagree.
Mads, another question for you. How do you think married couples or people who are dating or the church generally can love single people better at the moment, in your experience?
Such a good question.
Thank you.
I actually think this is a really good question, because I'd say this is the point where I have like struggled the most in being single, is when I think people have maybe been like, not even intentionally, but like accidentally ignorant to like what they're saying or like what they're doing. And I think the biggest one that I struggled with, and like I don't struggle with it now because I think it still does happen, but like have been able to kind of process it and just be like, they're not being malicious in it, is like when people do things that are like exclusively for couples. So like, oh, like we're gonna go on a double date, like, oh, let's go on a double date, like, oh, you've just got a boyfriend, let's go on a double date, like, and like, oh, like we, like us 4 couples went out, and like there's nothing wrong with that, that's beautiful, I get it, I really do. I think it's beautiful to like surround yourself with other couples who are like journeying the same things as you. But I think I just, like, for a long time I saw that as, you are exclusively not able to come to this like scenario or whatever because you are single, and like it's that is such a like, you are being shut out of this because you don't have a partner, and just like that, I just think that is like, and I know that double dates happen and it's actually not like that, but I think I used to personally really struggle with like, and even I think it's even just the wording, like if Liz was like, oh yeah, me and Tobes are going out with Beth and Dan, I'd just be like, sick.
Whereas it's like friends meeting up rather than...
Whereas if you guys were like, oh, I can't wait for our double date later, like that's going to be so exciting. Like, I just think I'd be like, sweet one, like, can I not bring a friend?
Can I come?
But not even that, like, can I come on my own? Like,
and
I think...
Which obviously you always can.
Always. And I just think I've been in countless scenarios where, yeah, like I was saying earlier, like just, yeah, married Christian couples idolise their marriage, and or like other married couples of being like, let's do this together, like that's so like we could all do that together. And I just think like, yeah, I think maybe in the church, I think single people are a minority, which is crazy. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And I guess it changes church to church, but yeah, I think it is something that obviously, because it's not like married people don't think of single people because they're married. But it's just something that's like...
But then that's, I think, a whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, that, to me, is wrong.
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's, you know, like saying you're a girl, so you don't think of what boys might think. Like,
yeah,
just because you're not in that moment, I don't think means that you automatically should stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
Don't know, maybe it's having, like, conversations with your friends.
And I definitely have had to do that before with a couple of friends, of just being like, you make me feel so like excluded when you speak like that. I think that's
so good and takes like such boldness, so like hats off to you, because I think that can completely change how things go.
And like you said, like especially if they haven't even realised that they're doing it, I think just making them aware of that is so good. And I totally agree with you. I think it should just be an inclusive thing and not a separate just because you're in a relationship, or you're not in a relationship so you're not coming. Like I agree. Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah, I just think that like there are definitely people I know and I've come across that make their relationship status or like their relationship their identity, and it just makes me so sad, because I'm just like almost like when I'm like, oh, how are you, and they're like, oh yeah, well me and so are like doing really well, and we did this, and we and like I get it's a big part of life, so like please speak about it as much as you want, but like I'm like, no, I want to see like how are you, like what have you been doing, how's work, like
what's going on in your heart,
how's your faith with God, like in the nice way. Your boy's not in that really, like he is, but like you should be able to tell me what your relationship with God is without bringing him in.
1,000%.
But yeah, I think people like think that they only think people are going to want to speak to them if they're like, I don't know, in a relationship, or want to hang out with them if they're in a relationship. I just think it's not true at all. I think another question for like you two that I have is like how you guys have gone around boundaries and like journeying boundaries in your relationship, because it's quite a prominent thing within Christian relationships.
Christian.
But it's very important, not in like a I back it all the way.
It's not a joke, man.
I love a boundary.
I think that from the start of your relationship, it's really good to take a second to think about what your boundaries are and what you are currently comfortable with, and then address that to your partner and give them the chance to do the same, rather than it being right, this is what I want and this is my stopping point, this is my right, we're not going here, we're not doing this, rather than just telling the other person, let them have their space to tell you too, because you might find that it's slightly different, and that's okay, but just working out what respects both of you from the start, I think is really good. So I think if you're getting into a relationship, or you're just thinking about bringing boundaries into it, take space to go separately, think about it, and then come together to have that conversation. And it might be a really hard conversation, because some people have never spoken about it, and it can be a little bit weird to be like, right, we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about our boundaries. But it's really good to say it from the start, because if you don't, it's just a really blurred line, and you could feel uncomfortable about something, but they don't even know that you're uncomfortable about it because you haven't addressed it. So I think it's just really important to just do it, rip the band-aid off and do it from the start, like I think is my biggest tip. And if you haven't done it yet and you've been with someone for a while, like, do it now. And because if your partner really cares about you, they won't want you to feel uncomfortable. So I think having that conversation with them is just so important. but also making sure that it's not just a one-sided thing, but that you come to a place where you're both happy with that and you both agree on something without giving up your boundaries as well. Just because they're slightly more flexible than you, whatever, you come to something that you're comfortable with is what I would say.
And what would you say as well, just quickly? How do you think couples should go about when a boundary is overstepped? Because like it is going to happen in one regard or other, and like how have you and Toby navigated that?
First off, it sometimes is really hard to keep to those boundaries, and sometimes you do go a little bit further than you might have wanted to go, and you're actually like, the best thing I can say is if that happens in any way, if you just overstep just a little bit, talk about it. Stop it when you want to stop it and talk about it there and then. Don't just put it to the back of your mind and not talk about it, but talk about it right there and then. Get it off, and don't feel like you failed and that you've done a horrible thing, but just think, okay, we've done this, we've overstepped what we set as our boundaries. That's okay. Like we've done it. Let's move forward and try to not do that again. And I think just talking about it is so important. Well,
it's so funny. I think boundaries, literally me and Dan have been sick of the conversation of boundaries. Like it's so, I mean, and that's probably a good thing, I guess, because frequent conversation is good and important. And I think I would say, even if you're single actually, and before you get into a relationship, get very comfortable with where you're at with boundaries and really know, because if you meet someone and then you're like, oh, I fancy him, then it's very easy to start compromising these boundaries very quickly. And I think if you have more of a set thing of like, this is where I'm at and this is exactly how I want it to go, then it's a lot easier to have those conversations, because you're not like, I think maybe this would be good. Like really get good with God about it. And I think also Dan and I found like setting the camp further away from the fire is definitely good. Like it might feel a bit extreme or, you know, restrictive, and even if it's just for a time, like we've had times when we've been like, right, we're gonna just really, you know, put some serious boundaries in for a minute. Doesn't have to stay like that forever, but you've got to go with where you guys are at. And I think like having frequent conversations with each other to be like, are you happy with the way we're doing our relationship at the moment? How can I love you better in this? And it is that constant thing of being like how can I prefer Dan in this? Because I think something I found so helpful is like, when it comes to my boundaries, I'm probably more likely to compromise them if they're for me, because I know I'm the person that's being affected by it. But when I changed my mindset to being like, actually, I know this is Dan's boundary, and if we choose to go past that, it's Dan it's affecting,
so
not
good.
just me.
And I think that's really helped, because I'm like, it's not just my heart that's involved in this anymore. Like there's two people here. So I think that's been really helpful. And also speak to other people, speak to your pastors, other couples who you really respect, and like just have serious and honest conversations with them, because I think every couple has struggled with it. I've never met a couple who's like easy like
easy peasy.
I'd be like how but so I think have those conversations, don't be afraid to have them, and just be honest about it.
I think as well, like I think off the back of speaking to a lot of couples, like I think one of the things as well that I have spoken to like new couples about, and like kind of have felt like I can give not wisdom into, but like have wanted to speak about, is so many people I've spoken to have said like about in the moment when a boundary is overstepped physically, for example, like just get a bit carried away or like whatever, couple too many smoochies, do you know what I'm saying? Like just gets a bit hot and heavy. You and your partner's response in that moment is so important in terms of if you guys are like, just kissing and stuff, and then one person gets up and runs away or walks away and just leaves the other like just left there, like in whatever state they're in. Like, that can actually be really harmful in
100%.
terms of like sex equals rejection, or like as soon as I start feeling sexy or start feeling whatever, I know the answer to that is going to be rejection. I know the answer to that is going to be my partner has just, it's suddenly a flip has switched, and I've gone from feeling really loved and taken care of to vulnerable and like disgusting, like kind of disgusting. Like they've just walked out on me in a very vulnerable position. And so I think, and that actually, I know a lot of people who that has laced into marriage when some of those boundaries can be loosened. Like actually they're like, I actually still feel really, really guilty about this. And it's just about making physical, like, love and physical affection something that is a gift, and being like, we're really excited that for when we can explore
1000%.
this, and we like, it's actually a beautiful thing that we want to do this together. Like I think we often think about it as this thorn in our side of our flesh that we just have to deal with, when actually, like, God wants us to have sex. Like, just a PSA, guys, God wants you to be able to worship him in the intimacy of sex with your partner and only your partner. And like, these boundaries, the things you read in the Bible, they are there for your benefit. They are there because God is like, I know the potential that you can have in your sexual intimacy with one person, and that is something that needs to be protected and like waited upon. And it's just, I just think it's the most beautiful thing. And like,
I agree.
I
think there's something so beautiful in the waiting of it. And I think if one thing a friend once said to me is like, not constantly being like, oh, I wish we could do that, or I wish we could do this, but actually celebrating the intimacy of the moment you're in. Of being like, I love the fact that we can sit and watch a film together, or that we can have deep conversations together, or whatever it is, like however you feel closest to your partner. Really celebrate that and enjoy that, because like the time will come, but if the more you're like wishing it away kind of thing, I think the harder it makes it, because you become more aware of it. Like
100%.
You know, be like, you know, look forward to celebrating it, that's good, but also really like enjoy the moment you're in, because you're not dating forever.
Exactly, you're never gonna get that season back. So I think just like you said, Mads, about reacting in that moment, I think it just all comes down to being so good at communicating with your partner about how you're feeling, and if you feel that they've handled something wrong and it's actually affected you and made you feel rejected, made you feel like you're not enough for them, or whatever it is, it's just about having that conversation there and then. And I think it's about doing it as soon as you can in those moments,
100%.
so you're not just burying it for later.
Because that's never going to be their intention anyway, is it? You know,
never.
I think people just freak out and then they're like, run away.
It all comes from good intention, but it's just like how it can come across, it like
over communicate everything.
Everything
100%.
In everything, not even just romantic relationships. Over communication is key. Liz, so with all of that in mind, how have you and Toby been preparing for marriage?
For the boundaries to be lifted. Ooh. Or is that not the direction we're going?
Oh gosh. So we've, like I said at the beginning, we've been engaged for a year now, and planning a wedding, guys, is a lot. Like, there's a lot that goes into it. No one prepares you for it. It's just all like,
don't wish it upon anyone.
It's just a lot. These guys have witnessed all of my little lists that I've had to make, and just all the things I have to think about. So it's a lot. So it's a very busy season is what I will say. But something that we were really adamant that we wanted to do when we got engaged was a pre-marriage course. And we wanted to take time out to really, like you say, prepare for marriage. And it was just, it was really good to do that, and I would recommend it to anyone. It was a 5-week course, and there's 5 sessions. I'll just read out the sessions. So it's communication, conflict, commitment, connection, and adventure. These were...
Me and Beth both just looked at each other, raised our eyebrows. Oi. Let's get adventurous.
Sorry, let's carry on.
But in those sessions, it made us talk about difficult stuff and really understand what our partner is feeling about a certain thing, whether it's kids or how we're going to spend Christmases or like the really light stuff, but also like the deeper stuff about like finances and how we deal with conflict. And it was really interesting to just go through that together. And we did it with our pastors, Sam and Mandy, and we sat with them and went through the session and chatted about things during and after, and it was just a really good thing to do, and it's something I would recommend for anyone. But just to really ask those big intentional questions before you get to your wedding day, I think is so important to really know where your future spouse is at, what they want for the future, and so you're not going in with expectations of what you think it's going to be like, but what do they think it's going to be like.
I would even say, like, just as someone who like journeys life with you and Tobes, I actually can see you guys, I can see a difference in you guys off the back of this course. I haven't actually told you that, but like, I think, the way you guys, if there's any times I have seen you dealing with conflict.
Not all the time.
No, not all the time. I think you do it a lot better now than you may have.
And I think having those conversations before you're married takes pressure off, because
honestly,
imagine you're freshly married and you're like, hang on, we haven't spoken about what we're going to do with finances. Like that's suddenly like, well, I'm in this now. Whereas before you can be like looking forward to it and still being in a place where you two are individuals still. Like individuals anyway, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a lot less pressure than being 2 weeks into being married and then suddenly really butting heads about something.
100%.
I think one thing that we spoke about actually on the course was like expectation and what we expected from our spouse to do, whether it's like the simple things like hoovering or doing the dishes or paying the bills or whatever it was, just talking about the expectation we had over each other, but then coming to a like level ground agreement of like, what are we going to do together and what is going to be our things separately, but what is going to be our life together and what do we expect from each other.
Good. That is really good.
It's just really good to have those conversations before you get married. So whether it's in a physical like sit down, do a book together kind of thing, or just sitting down one afternoon and actually going through everything, I think it's really important to do that.
Love that, Liz. That's very wise. Okay, Mads, one last question for you before we wrap up.
Hit
me with it.
So, as a single woman, what do you do when it's 11 o'clock at night and you suddenly like flip, I fancy someone? When you're laid in bed and you're like, oh no.
Got a little crush. When I tell you guys, having a crush is literally my least favourite thing. I would rather weed your entire garden and redo it than have a crush. That's a bit excessive, but I just find it so stressful. So stressful. Like, I hate it. I honestly, but it obviously, like, it happens, someone catches your eye here and there. What do I do?
Especially if they were friends as well. Sorry, that's literally not a hint to anything. That sounds...
I don't have a crush on any of my friends, luckily. But I think I actually have never... I've had it before where I've kind of like for a week, where I've like met a guy, become friends, and then for a week been like, oh, like maybe. But once I've gotten past that point of like, oh no, we're just friends, I've never had that fire relit of like, oh, but wait, like... Which is, I'm really glad, because like I have some really close guy friends and it would just honestly mess the entire thing up if I suddenly was like, oh, actually I kind of fancy you.
That moment's so normal though at the start of friendship, I think.
So normal.
When you really start to get on with someone, you're like, hang on.
100%.
Yeah.
Like
99% of the time it is just that you're good friends.
Yeah, but exactly.
So normal, guys.
So normal. And I think I have, and I think a lot of girls have a very active imagination, and so I think when I start like picking up on someone and being like, oh, he's kind of cool, and nowadays it happens a lot more after getting to know them. It's not like, obviously you see someone like as in physically, like I'll see people and be like, cool, he's a bit of me, or like being like, oh yeah, he's very attractive. But I think for me to actually have a crush on someone, like being like, oh, like, I actually really fancy them. Yeah, it has to be a deeper friendship. Yeah, I think I have to actively like rein in my imagination, because when I was younger, like genuinely would have imagined a whole life with marriage and kids and a dog after meeting a person once.
Yeah.
Like being like, oh, like we've met today and then like next week we're going to chat and then he's going to be like, you're the most beautiful girl in the world, and then we kiss and just run off to the sunset, and he actually kind of forgot my name. Do you know what I mean?
I blame films for that.
In real life. Yeah, exactly.
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
Don't even get me started on films.
Yeah.
Films and expectations. But yeah, I think now, like, I do go to prayer with it, which sounds so like cliche of like just pray about it, but I actually do. Like, I'll just be like, Lord, thank you for this lovely brother in Christ that we have before me. Let me know if he is my brother or the man.
Do you want him to stay my brother or not?
Are you my brother or not? Yeah. Yeah, I think just praying, just being like, Father, like, your will, not mine. But I also am very, like, I think as quite a, like, confident, strong-willed woman, I used to not mind taking the lead in terms of, like, sliding into the DMs or, like, being the more confident one of being like, oh, do you want to go for a coffee? Yeah. Whereas now I've been really challenged in, like, allowing the man to lead and just be, and like just really like, I just think like I've really prayed, and like I feel like God will really honour me in this, of like, if that did come about of like me, the scratching to the surface of someone I was going to get into a relationship with, of like, no, God, like I want them to like initiate and lead me and like be the first to initiate. Like I don't, because that is a big thing for me of like, and I think that has really stopped my mind roaming in terms of being like, oh, like maybe I should just text them and then that'll like get the ball rolling. Whereas now I'm like, look, if it's a thing, like God. And I once heard this podcast, actually, it's called the Handlebar Podcast, and it's literally insane. I love it. And there's a married couple on there, and he was saying that when he fancied his now wife, he said like, God, show me how, like, not how to flirt with her, but like show me the ways to like connect to her heart. And she literally said like, I remember when Aaron started like pursuing me, I remember thinking like, he's pursued me the way Jesus has. And like it was so I know sweet. Literally. And so just being like, God, show me, like show that person like how I want to be pursued, show them how you pursued me, like Father, and not just a boy like, or you want to go for a, I don't know.
But like, I think that is an insane foundation for a relationship. Like,
massively.
Whether that person ends up being the person that you're with or whatever, to start a relationship, or every time you're like, that guy is actually a bit of a legend and we do get on really well. Yeah. For your first thing to be including God in it. Yeah. Like, that's sick. And like you said, to allow him to pursue you. Yeah. Is really cool. And I think actually is a thing of us putting our pride down and being like, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Yeah. And if he wants to, he will.
Yeah. But it gives me like, I just found so much permission and freedom in it, and how I act. Like, if I fancy a boy now, I won't act any different to how I would around friends, because I'm just like, God, like,
take the wheel.
Yeah, you take the wheel. Like, I can't, like, me batting my eyelashes isn't going to change anything. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't want it to either.
If they'll love you at your best, they'll love you at your worst. And so you might as well just be them yourself.
If you don't love me at my worst, you can't have me at my best. Am I right?
Amen, sister.
Amen, sister. Sorry, that was actually supposed to be a light-hearted question, but we actually went deep. But that's
all right.
That's fine.
That's
we love
good.
deep here. Yeah.
We've had some good questions, guys. Some good chats.
So fun.
No, it was interesting. I like chatting to you guys about that.
I'm a book of wisdom for when I'm in a long-term relationship.
There you go.
In God's will, if it may happen.
So our next episode is our last episode.
This has flown by, guys.
It actually has.
Yeah. But next week we're doing a Q&A. So send in your questions, guys.
Please send in your videos, your questions. Can be videos if you're asking a question if you want.
Go on.
Yeah.
Little voice note.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'd love that. That'd be so fun.
Yes, please.
But yeah, we would love to have your questions about anything we've spoken about, anything we haven't spoken about that you want us to talk about.
Yeah.
We would love to answer your questions. So please send them in. Instagram, DMs.
Text us if you know us.
If you know us, give us a message. We'd love to hear from you.
Right, guys.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next week.
Bye. See ya.